Recently, I've been seeing more and more articles come out claiming that the free speech crisis does not exist, and that anyone who says it does exist is simply using the phrase as a political tool to push their own moral agenda. Now, for clarity, I consider myself to be on the left. I think, however, that there is a clear movement within the left to push their policies and agenda much too far. If you're watching this and consider yourself on the right, then you should be able to find videos on my channel that pose difficult questions to the left. If you're on the left, then hopefully you can find things that will make you ask questions of yourself and consider the benefits of competition and market freedom, as well as limits to the size of government and its involvement in the lives of its citizens. I believe, as Jordan Peterson has stated on many occasions, that the issues found on universities with safe spaces, self-segregation, microaggressions, and more are indicators of things to come. The people coming out of universities today are tomorrow's leaders and lawmakers. The notion that there is no crisis with free speech is false. It exists all over the world as those with political and religious power try to control others. I'm putting together a few videos to completely refute the argument that free speech is not under attack, but for now, I just want to help clarify the issue. We just need to get back to an understanding of the original premise of why free speech is important and point out fundamentally how some on the far left are hurting it. It's been almost a year since Gadsad posted his first conversation with Jordan Peterson. In the conversation, the general issue of free speech was defined. After this clip, I also show a clip from the Rubin Report and his interview with Peter Boghossian. Links to both interviews are in the description.
Now, free speech is not precisely the right to say whatever you want, although it is that. That's a careless characterization of something fundamental. Okay, so what free speech is the right and maybe the obligation to conduct discourse in a manner that's aimed at addressing and solving serious problems. Okay, so we might say our society is made up of people who differ for all sorts of reasons in their viewpoints, but we have to live together and cooperate and compete in a hopefully sustainable and nonviolent manner. And there are mechanisms that allow that to occur. And the most fundamental mechanism that allows that to occur is discourse. And discourse has to be free because discourse is the major way that we solve our problems without fighting. And the reason that discourse helps us solve our problems is because, first of all, we can articulate our being in a manner that other people can begin to understand, and they can object to that, and then we can clarify what the problem is, and then we can start to talk about solutions. And then if we come up with a good problem statement, here's a problem, this needs to be addressed, and then we can articulate a solution, and we can negotiate about that. That means we can all get behind the solution, and we can move forward with solving problems, and we don't have to devolve into conflict. And so the alternative to discourse is conflict. Like outright physical conflict.
Gad takes a minute and says that the free speech definition may be too stringent and should allow for even the notion of saying idiotic things.
I'm not disagreeing with that at all. What I'm trying to point out is, see, I would say the central reason that society has to protect free discourse is because it is the fundamental problem-solving mechanism. And then I would say a byproduct of that is the necessity to allow people to say offensive things, foolish things, stupid things, partly because they're malevolent at times, but also partly because it's very frequently the case that when someone initially formulates an argument, and I mean, I see this in my clinical practice all the time, when you initially attempt to formulate an argument, you're going to do a very bad job of it because you haven't formulated the argument yet. And so you have to be allowed to stumble around like a moron, because it's the only way that you're ever going to trip over the truth. And, if you can do that publicly, then people can comment on what you're doing and they can help you shape your arguments. Okay, so you've got the central issue, which is the problem-solving mechanism. And then you've got a peripheral issue, which is the right of people to do it badly and stupidly. Okay, then you might say, and you already brought this up, that despite that, reasonable people can agree that certain limitations on expression are necessary. And the classic example is that you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. And then you can have a reasonable discussion about what those limits might be. It's not surprising that people are concerned about issues like hate speech, because speech can be hateful. But that's not the issue. The issue is whether or not it's more dangerous to allow freedom of speech that goes in that direction, or to suppress and forbid it. And I think the evidence for that is clear. It's far more dangerous to suppress it. I think you actually validate it by suppressing it, and worse, you drive the acolytes of those viewpoints underground, and you don't subject them to proper public criticism. Even psychologically, the fact that people who have, let's call them pathological viewpoints, for lack of a better word, if they cannot express those freely in public, they can't benefit from criticism. And criticism doesn't just mean shut up and go away. That's not criticism. Criticism means, well, here's how we differentiate your argument into its sub-elements, and here's how we demolish it line by line. And so, having done that, go back and reformulate it, or ignore it, but you ignore that at your peril. If you ignore rationality and rational argument, then, well, good luck to you.
Having ideas that seem idiotic to you, openly expressed, provides two benefits. The first is that you get to challenge and criticize that person's idea. This allows the person to see that their argument or statement may be false. The second benefit is for the public, in that they get to hear and see how false the original argument or statement may be. For those on the far left, the same principle applies to the absurdity of safe spaces.
You're giving people an opportunity to reflect on how they know what they know. And the only way you can do that is through an unsafe space. The only way you can do that is to really take a look at these ideas and examine these ideas. There just is no other way. So if they have, their values are arbitrary and subject to cultural capriciousness unless they can be rationally derived. And they've taken out the engine of rationality once they've created spaces in which you can't ask these questions.
If you think you hold the higher, morally correct position, you should be able to challenge opposing positions held by others, as well as willingly accept challenges to your own position. It is the only way that you benefit, the holder of the opposing viewpoint will benefit, and the public can benefit. This can only be accomplished in a society that protects free speech and understands its importance. Attempts to suppress the ability of others to speak, while supporting safe space environments, are the antithesis of this. You can't say that safe spaces are needed for you, then riot while using violence or threats to keep others from speaking. The argument claiming free speech is being suppressed is misused at times by both the right and the left. The fact that some people use the argument for political advantage doesn't mean that there is no crisis. Understanding and acknowledging this has to be the first step. Denying it's happening only hurts.
Okay, people, move along. There's nothing to see here.
Oh, motherfucker! Oh, shit!
Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a comment and hit that like button. If you didn't like it, please explain why. Open discussion is the only way to have a better understanding of differing views. Sharing this video on social media can help keep conversations alive. Now, here are a few other videos that you may be interested in.